The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
You're listening to the House of Cards on Facebook, YouTube, and BigPatriotRadio.com. All licenses for music and content have been purchased by and are for the express use of Big Patriot Radio Networks. All information, opinions, and topics are for entertainment purposes only and do not expressly represent the opinions of the show's host and or producer. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Introducing to you.
You're on House of Cards. Live on Facebook and YouTube.
It's going down.
Locked and loaded with the truth.
And good evening, everybody. Hey, happy Thursday once again, 13th of November. Already halfway through the month. It is, wow, time just keeps on getting faster and faster, it seems. I'm Mike Cover. Good to see you here. Tonight, I am your host and producer, coming to you live from the confines of the BigPatriotRadio.com studio here in the great state of South Carolina. I want to welcome everyone watching on Facebook, YouTube, and to those listening all over the country. As a matter of fact, a lot of folks over there in Omaha at that Air Force base. Once again, that crowd is growing. They're listening in on BigPatriotRadio.com. Want to thank you to those folks, as always. Very important. We thank the folks that have been here with us since day one, as well as those who are tuning in for the very first time. We want you to enjoy it. Be sure to like the show wherever you're listening or watching. Share it with your friends. Share it on your pages. That'll help give us some credibility, as they say, to the algorithms. And while you're at it, don't forget, be involved in the chat during tonight's show. You can ask questions, make comments, whatever. Put it in your chat bar. It'll come here. And by the way, go ahead and get started and let us know where everyone was born. Where everyone was born, just let us know. We keep a track of all that kind of stuff. Kind of goofy thing to do, but we like to do it. Let's see. We have, man, what a show do we have for you tonight? We're going to jump right into it. Again, for those of you on YouTube, be sure to, I guess it's subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, be sure to like and share. And hey, I told you for 2 weeks I was trying to get this, and I finally figured it out. They let me in charge of this. If you see up there in the, I guess it'll be the upper left corner of your screen, there is a QR code. Go ahead and scan that QR code at any time. That'll put a link on your phone, a app, if you will, to BigPatriotRadio.com. That way you don't have to enter it in your browser or anything like that. All you got to do that one time. It'll flash on your phone. It'll permanently put it there. And you want to listen to BigPatriotRadio.com with blues, news, classic pop, and country rock. All you got to do is click on that.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
Excuse me. I want to follow up on last week's big story. That was Chairman Dick Geyer of the Beaufort County School Board saying some things on a hot mic. If you remember, and those of you that don't, we're going to play it again. Saying some things that he probably should take back. But as far as we know, and we have an ear on these things, as far as we know, he hasn't taken this back. Well, then this is kind of what you get. So let's see if we can't share something. And what you're going to listen to, this is a picture of yours truly. This is about a 50-second clip from last week's show. You're going to hear William Smith, school board member William Smith, and then you'll hear Chairman Dick Geyer, and, well, you'll figure it out. So let's go to that now. Now, as you're looking at this screen, what you see here, I think you may see my little pointer. But anyway, over here on the left, into the table. Yeah, you do see my little pointer. Anyway, this is Dr. Frank Rodriguez. He is the superintendent of schools Empty space, empty space. There's Mr. Will Smith. He represents Ladies Island. There is Victor Ney. I believe he is District 5, which is like from Burton to Kalawasi to Riverbend. Ingrid Boatwright, which is District 10. Or no, she's District 11, which is like Sea Pines down that way. Here we have Dick Geyer, chairman. He represents Shell Point and Beaufort. Here on the end with his hands under his chin, remember I was talking about this at the beginning of the show. There is from District 1. He represents
their comments to be noted.
There we go. Let's go back right here. We have here. We are missing Chloe Gordon. She's District 2, which is Beaufort, up over Ladies Island, and then like up to the air station. Alfonso Smalls represents District 6, the Pritchardville and Bluffton areas. I believe that's all. Anyway, that's who the players are. I want you to pay attention and listen in as we go forward.
That's what you want. It's simple. I'm appealing the rule of the chair to have both of their comments to be noted as we used to have in under our board notes. However you want to put it.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second online? I hear no second. The motion fails. And without further discussion or objection, we will adjourn by unanimous consent.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Take this and shove it right up his ass.
Oh, that's right. You heard it right. You heard it right. You heard Chairman Dick Geyer. You heard him right there. He said, hey, I want to take this and shove it right up his ass. Not sure exactly who he was talking to. Give him the benefit of the doubt, even though he and Will Smith were in quite a little spat there. Not sure who he's talking about or what he was going to shove up his keister, but whatever it is, whoever it was, that kind of thing is not what we expect out of a chairman. Anyway, here live on the show, we called for Geyer to resign and to resign immediately. I reached out to Will Smith last week to see if he would like to come on the show, give his perspective, tell us what's going on inside his head. He said he could not, his legal people, he said, told him he can't speak in public about it. Okay, I respect that. Stay tuned for that, I guess. Anyhow, also last week, even more important than this, we gave you news from the Beaufort County School District in a reply to our asking, and I want you to pay attention to this. Put down the glass of wine, hold up on the cocktail, listen to this. We asked if anyone in the May River High School or on the May River High School campus is under investigation for any type of possible sexual crime against a minor female student. The school district's chief communications officer, Dr. Candace Bruder, replied, and I quote, "The school district is unable to comment on an active law enforcement investigation. That the individual is no longer allowed on Beaufort County School District property, and that you would need to contact Coastal Security for employment status," end quote. Obviously, this story is developing. And those were words. Matter of fact, we were not going to produce this story or add it to the show, yet that Dr. Bruder did respond to us, so we took that quote, and that's what we gave to you. We're going to continue to monitor that and bring any updates or breaking news as it may develop. While we're talking county stuff, right quick, I had a fan reach out to us earlier wanting to know if I had any suggestions for her because Beaufort County Stormwater Management phone has been steady busy all week. I tried. It's busy. So to the county council folks that are watching tonight or listening in, can someone find out why Stormwater Management is that busy that their phone has been busy all week long? reach out to me by text or email or whatever, and I'll pass along the citizen's phone number, who I am sure would be interested in hearing back from you.
Everything that rocks is right here. Right here.
That's rock.
With Big Patriot Radio.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right. Tonight's guest, you're going to be bringing him on here. He is a publisher. You're going to enjoy the hell out of this story. I've enjoyed producing it. I've enjoyed every bit of reading about this. This guy is a publisher. He's a journalist, acclaimed author. I think this is his third or fourth book that he's at. Podcaster, talk show host, music producer here in South Carolina. His latest book, Defending Alex Murdaugh, Not Guilty by Reasonable Doubt. It's out now on Amazon in both Audible and paperback versions. I strongly suggest you go and get it. And there's his website. I just put that on the screen, and his TikTok account. You can check out all his stuff on crimeandcask.com. You can also go to TikTok, where he is a social media influencer. Please join me as we bring in Crime and Cask, James Seidel, to the show. Welcome, buddy.
How you doing, Mike? I appreciate it.
I'm doing good.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. I like that very much. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on here with us, and a lot of folks have been talking about it. We've been throwing it out there all over social media and hearing a lot of feedback, and some positive, some negative, and that's good, as long as they're talking about it.
Right.
I got to tell you, I just finished the book the other day, and
What'd you think?
I was, I hated when I had to put it down to, go to bed, or put it down to take another phone call, because I was writing notes, and it kept me going to the next thing and thinking about things I had previously thought, and now thinking in a different, I don't know what the word would be, but a different lane, a different opinion,
Right.
based on things.
Yeah. So before I wrote the book, before Crime and Cask ever became Crime and Cask, I had listened to different podcasts out there, and I had read articles about what was going on. I live in South Carolina, so it concerned me very much of the Alex Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh and Maggie Murdaugh, and that was just huge news. And then the trial started. And then when the trial started, everything that I was told pretty much just didn't add up to me. It didn't make sense. It's not what I was told. For an example, the high velocity back spatter T-shirt. You remember that with Agent David Owen? So things like that didn't. And I live close enough. I drove over to Moselle, and I just started doing these little experiments on my own and timing myself. I'm sure people that live out there thought, who is this guy crazy running up and down Moselle Road? But I started to develop a storyline that is a completely different alternate storyline that's out there. And that's always hard to break. So when you say, defending Alex Murdaugh, not guilty by reasonable doubt, that turns some heads in a room when you say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the narrative is he did it. And, and I think people believe what they saw on TV. They believe the jury. They believe a lot of things that, podcasters and they've been told on Netflix and HBO and now Hulu. And so these things start to get blurred after a while. But I've just been on this for actually quite a few years, since the murders themselves in 2021. And I just saw some things that just really made me question. The biggest thing I can think of, and I've done a few articles and stories on this at crownandcast.com, is Maggie's phone. If everybody remembers at the beginning of the trial, Creighton Waters stood up in his opening statement, and he's holding that phone up in the air, and he's like, this is going to tell you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And it really did. But there were some things that they told us, and then there were some things that they didn't tell us. And the biggest thing that I look at, in fact, I met with Jim and Dick about 6 weeks ago, I think, my private investigator and we went down and we had a conversation with them. One of the things I was talking to them about was at 9:05:44. And why does 9:05:44 matter to anybody? So Maggie's phone was already down at the kennels. We know that. That's where she was. And someone prior to that had picked up her phone and walked 59 steps.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I took a look at the map of Moselle and, measured what 59 steps would be. It's about 149 feet and some change. And so you start looking around. Well, why would they walk this way? Why would they walk that way? Why would they walk this way? And the only logical way that they would walk would be from where Maggie's body was, where her phone was, pick it up, and then walk towards the left side of the hangar, which is right where the gravel road ends and just where the officers saw the tire tracks in the grass that no one took a picture of. To this day, I still don't know why. And so there her phone sat until 9:05:44. And at 9:05:44, her phone lit up, according to SLED. And when I say lit up, it's mean when you pick up your phone lights up.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody picked up the phone. And then her phone had stopped moving at 9:06:20. So why all this matters is the difference between 9:05:44 and 9:06:20 is exactly 36 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about this. I'm like, all right, let me break this down. So at 9:05:44, her phone lights up. At 9:06:12, Alex calls Maggie's phone. And at that time, if you remember during the trial, he had said, I called her phone and I immediately hung up because I thought I heard them coming up. He says, so I hung up the phone and I thought, no, that's not them. So he immediately called back at 9:06:14. So he called once at 9:06:12, 9:06:14. And then at 9:06:20, her phone went from portrait to landscape. And then that's the last movement her phone made. But what I told those guys was, Jim and Dick, what I said was at 9:05:44, someone picked up her phone and it stopped moving. I said, it's 36 seconds. And I said, so what I did is I drove out to Moselle, and on the backside where the dog kennels are, the back entrance, I started there on the road and I got up to speed pretty quick. And I know where Maggie's phone was found. And I kept measuring that. And I'd go back and then I would measure it again and measure it again and measure it again. And like 95% of the time, I was coming up at 30 seconds. Sometimes it'd be 29. There a few times it was 31, but it was 30 seconds. And then I didn't go on the property, but what I did was on Google Maps, figured out the distance between the backside of that hangar and where the road is.
Yep.
And it's not very far. It's about a 5 to 6 second drive. So if you add 6 seconds to 30 seconds, what do you get?
There you go.
36 seconds.
There you go.
Jim and Dick didn't know that. I said, but here's the thing. Between 9:05:44 and 9:06:20, Alec Murdaugh is in his front yard and he's moving. He's moving his feet. You remember that? Oh, you're walking so much, Mr. Murdaugh. What are you doing? You're taking all these steps. Well, he was in his front yard and he was calling Maggie. He was calling his dad. He was making a few phone calls, but he was moving and his phone was recording steps. His phone was recording movements. Every time you move your phone, my phone right now is recording me. It's everything that I'm doing with this phone. So at 9:06:20, when her phone stops moving forever, until the next morning, he's still moving. He is walking to his Suburban. He's going to get into his Suburban. And somebody needs to explain to me, like I'm a third grader, how his phone is moving and he's recording steps. As GPS says he's recording steps, yet her phone is making 0 movements. And I always say this, 0 plus 0 It's still zero. Her phone isn't making any movements. So the state, whether they knew this or not, they left that part out because two things can't be true at the same time. You know, he can't, her phone cannot be moving and then he have it in his hand because he's going to be making moves. He's walking, he's, you know, fidgety guy. He's walking to his truck. He gets into his truck. I've got a Suburban. You kind of jump into it, even though he's a big guy. It's a lot to get into. He's making a lot of movements. Her phone was not making any movements. And of course, he drove out. And it wasn't until 9:08 when he drove by. And that was the other thing. When you talk about the text, so he texted Maggie, right? He called her at 9:12, didn't answer. 9:14, didn't answer. He's like, all right, I'm going to get my truck. Gets in his truck and drives out the main gate. As he gets
Gonna go see him.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he said?
Well, what he texted was going to check on M, be right back.
Yeah.
Now he spelled M-E-M, and then he spelled the word right, R-I-T-E. So it wasn't voice to text, because I tried that on my iPhone and it spells it correctly.
Okay.
And so he had to text it. So now I'm thinking, okay, let me try this. And according to the GPS, he started texting when he got onto Moselle Road. And then we know where Maggie's phone was found. It was right in the trees, right before Godly Farms. There's a little opening there. Just as he passed the trees, Godly Farms opens up. And so I said, okay, let me try to type this myself. Let's do what the state of South Carolina said that Alec Murdaugh did. And it's during the day. I'm not high on opioids. And I didn't just allegedly, off my wife and my son. So I start going in my Suburban, did the same thing. And I got up to 42 miles an hour, which is what he got up to. And I started typing the words, going to check on and be right back. I wasn't trying to do it slow. I was just typing the way I normally would. But I didn't type that. He did. And if you remember Alec, for those of you on YouTube, I'll put these glasses on. He always, had him at the end of his nose, right? The guy couldn't see where the darn. So he's got bad eyesight. He's high on opioids, according to him. And according to the state, he just offed his wife and his son. And now he's texting her this nice message, going to check on M, be right back.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. When I tried doing it, and again, I think I recorded it almost 30 times. Every time I would say, go and check on and be right back, and then I'd hit send, I was already past, not far, but already past the spot where her phone was. So I was out into the field there where Godly Farm Road was, or not Godly Farm Road, but Godly Farms. So, and then I just tried to do it really fast, and I started making mistakes. And the point of that is that I am stone sober in the middle of the day, and I can't replicate what they say Alec Murdaugh did at night in the dark. And when I say it's dark,
it's dark out there.
I mean, you can't see your hand in front of your face. And I just couldn't replicate it. So there's another thing I couldn't replicate. And then, the prosecution was like, then what did he do after he sent the text? Oh, he sped up. Well, he went from 42 miles an hour to 44. Yeah. So what I tell everybody is, okay, when you're sending a text, what do? You drive a little bit slow, right? Yeah. Because, and you shouldn't text and drive. I think in the state of South Carolina now, it's illegal to do. Yeah. However, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it probably slower. And then when you get done, you hit send. What do?
Speed up.
You look up, you grab the wheel, and you start going the speed limit.
Can confirm.
And then he did not make another phone call or do anything until he turned right on the Jonas Road, which ends up going out, I think, to 601 there. He took a right on Jonas Road, which is like this little back way, gravel road. And then he called Buster. And to me, that made sense too, because, all right, and now I just texted my wife, I'm going to drive, and then I'm going to turn right on Jonas Road. So then I'm going to drive for a while. So then I'll call Buster. So it's all these things that, like, I would do this. Why wouldn't he do it? But I went out and drove that path. I did what he did, and I could not ever replicate what the state said he did. And, and I think I can.
Those things are all, from what I understand, common for him. He's a phone-aholic from the people that I've spoken, I mean, he's always calling, always talking to somebody somewhere about something. Apparently, he goes from hunting conversations to legal conversations. To, I mean, he's a talker. He's a phone talker.
Yeah, well, I mean, a heavy talker. Mainly talks. Didn't text a whole lot, but he did text. But they were mainly talkers. Same way with Maggie. She texted, but their phone usage was more high. So they like to talk on the phone. The other thing I told Jim and Dick, we talked about David Owen and the whole back spatter and the T-shirt.
Agent of the year.
Agent of the year. So we all, for your folks who maybe be paying attention down in the Low Country, you know, he was just in the Michael Colucci case, where the Michael Colucci case got overturned because Agent Owen had withheld exculpatory evidence, and that was a major murder case. And so when it comes to Alec Murdaugh, I told the guys, I said, let me just break this down for you. So David Owen says they had the T-shirt, and he did not receive the emails from Sarah Zapata, who is the SLED agent doing all the blood and DNA work. Mm-hmm. He said he didn't get her emails until after the indictment of Alec Murdaugh. So, but the summer before the indictment, she did the blood test. No blood, no human blood. She did the DNA test, and besides a little bit of here, a little bit there, I think there was a little bit of Nolan Tootin when he gave him a hug afterward. There really wasn't much there to speak of either. And when they do these tests, especially the blood test, there's a chemical they put on it that kind of turns it this purplish blue.
Purple.
Yeah.
LCV, I think it is.
That's exactly it. And so that was done. And then, but Owen said he never received these. But so in February, before the indictment of Murdaugh, he sends this pictures, not the shirt, he sends pictures of the shirt out to a guy by the name of Tom Bevel out in Oklahoma, who's a backspatter expert, so to speak. He's a retired cop, works out of his garage and does something. But so they send it out to him, and a couple of weeks go by, and Bevel sends this report back and says, we didn't find any backspatter. Well, according to SLED records, Owen sent that information to his superiors. His superiors met with David Owen. And the next thing David Owen is on an airplane out to Oklahoma to meet with Tom Bevel. I thought that was interesting too. And we don't really know what happened in that meeting, but what we do know is that Tom Bevel, who is a backspatter expert, said there was zero backspatter on this shirt until David Owen went out there. And then a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden, the new report comes out, a revised report that says there are hundreds of spots of backspatter of human blood, meaning backspatter for folks is if for Paul getting shot by the 12-gauge shotgun, his blood would have come into like a fine mist, and it would have kind of a backspatter blown back towards Alec, or the shooter, and got into his T-shirt. So as I'm talking to Jim and Dick, I'm like, so what did he send to, what pictures did he send to Tom Bevel? And they're like, well, he sent the picture. Well, I said, what color was the T-shirt? And first they were like, I think it was white. No, it wasn't white. It was like a bluish purple. I said, oh, well, that's interesting. I said, well, think about that for 1 second. Think about what you just said. He sent pictures. SLED agent of the year, David Owen, sent pictures in February before he ever got Sarah Zapata's emails to Tom Bevel. I said, if he never received Sarah Zapata's emails, where did he get the pictures of a purple shirt? And they all kind of looked at me like deer in headlights. And I'm like, because any detective worth his weight in donuts knows that a purple shirt means an LCV test was done to it. And I said, so he lied to you on the stand. And now you have proof that he lied to you on the stand, because he did receive Sarah Zapata's emails, because there's no other way he could have got pictures of that T-shirt.
Yeah.
Unless. Now,
That's right.
you know, Dick and Jim ended up getting that information kicked out of the trial. So that's why you never saw Tom Bevel. But it was a big piece of getting Murdaugh indicted. And I think today, if he tried to get a new indictment without that information, I don't think they could indict him. And I think that's where SLED was. I don't think they couldn't indict him.
What do you mean Dick and Jim got that taken out of the trial? Tell me what you mean by that.
So the back spatter,
mm-hmm.
that was not produced as evidence, because
now can they, if there's a retrial or whatever, can that be reintroduced? Like, hey, the guy lied. The guy's lied. Here's the proof.
Well, they can certainly get him back on the stand and discredit him. And not only with that, I'd bring up Michael Colucci if I were them, but that evidence is not going to be brought in, except for the fact of what I told them was, where'd you get the picture of the T-shirt?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've actually did a FOIA request 2 times to SLED. And I specifically asked, and I gave them the exact dates, because I have the dates. I have the emails, but what I wanted, instead of the emails, because I already had them, was the date and time that Sarah Zapata sent them the David Owen, when it was received by David Owen, and when it was opened by David Owen. Mm-hmm. And because they're SLED, they have to retain all those emails by law. And they shot it down the first time, so I sent it a second time, and then the second time I got some snarky email back, basically saying, "Don't send this again, or it's borderline harassment." And I think that is, you're not going to get it.
Interesting, Jim. There's a few things that I want to bring up about your book.
Sure.
And probably the number one thing, and maybe this is just because this is the kind of guy I am, but your evidence that you bring out in the book it has a lot to do with angles, has a lot to do with angles and geometry, a lot to do with math in many forms, and hard data. In giving speeches and talking about like the game of football or wrestling, and I don't mean Hulk Hogan wrestling, but those two games are one because they are a game of angles. Even auto racing is a game of angles.
Correct.
And that's so important. And nowhere, and this isn't to, blow your skirt. Nowhere in that I've seen has anybody talked about hard data with angles and geometry and timing and math, the 90655 or whatever. That is so crucial, in my opinion, that 54 seconds or the 22 seconds or the whatever,
right?
Because that means something. And I wrote something down. Where did I have it here? When you go, how can one person, and this is what I think that the state was saying and others have said, one person basically went from firing 2 shots from a shotgun,
mm-hmm.
at an angle, at least the second one was at an angle that is not conducive to someone who's 6'4", in my opinion. Anyway, 2 shots from there, drop it, go pick up a 300 blackout that's not like nearby, cock it, reposition yourself to the appropriate position where Maggie would have been fired, behind Maggie,
mm-hmm.
as I understand it. Get down, prepare to aim, fire. I don't see a 60-year-old guy, whatever, 6'4", almost 300 pounds, with bad knees, taking 60 oxycodone a day, as he says. I can see a Navy SEAL maybe doing that, maybe, but not Alec Murdaugh.
Right. So what you're referring to And that's a great pickup. I haven't talked about that in a while, but that's a great pickup on that in the book. So what the state is saying, or what the state is trying to say, is that he shot Paul once and then shot him again. Now, I based off of, again, for those of you playing at home, I suggest you do this. You can go to Google Maps and you can measure down to the inch of anywhere in the world that is on Google Map. And so I made these measurements of where the dog kennel was and how far Maggie was from Paul and how far Maggie was from the hangar. So the state's saying she's in the hangar. And I talked to Blanca Simpson. I said, why would she be in the hangar? She's like, oh, that's easy. Because 4147 Moselle Road is actually the hangar address. It's not the main house. The main house has a little bit different address. She goes, but that's where UPS and FedEx and all the Amazon packages went. So
Correct.
That's where she would be. She goes, plus she was cleaning up after the guys, she's two boys and all his friends and Alec. Anyway, so she'd be in the hangar and she was quiet. But when I talked to Dick and Jim, I said, all right, Alex said he was down at there's the chicken and Bubba, and he puts the chicken up and he gets on the golf cart. I said, ask a question, did Maggie get in the golf cart with Alec as they drove in front of the hangar to go back to the house? And he said, no. I said, what'd she do? He said, she walked alongside it. I'm like, all right, fantastic. I said, so she walked alongside it as he was driving it slow, and he drove her to the hangar. She walked in, and then he took off. Yes. I said, okay, great. So now you've got Paul is literally shooting fish in a barrel. He can't run. When he walks puts his phone into his back pocket and walks into the feed room, there's no way out. So here's the thing. Here's the timing of how all this has to happen and how the angles have to happen. So let's assume for a second that Alec did it. This is what you're telling me, that a guy who is 6'4", how many pounds do you think he weighed it at that time?
I would say like 285, maybe somewhere in there, close to 300.
Oh, I bet he was over 300. He wore a size, I would say he wore a size waist, because I went to the auction. He wore a 45 or something crazy like that.
Okay. That's slightly bit smaller than me, and I'm at 295.
Well, but he's 6'4". But anyway, he's a big guy, and he's got bad knees, which is why he's taking the opioids, right? He's got bad knees, and he's got bad eyesight. Those are not good things, especially when you're out there. So we've got at 8:49:01, you've got Alex is going to go get the hidden shotgun, and he's got the 300 blackout close by. And he walks in front of the feed room, and there's Paul. Paul turns around, looks at him. He shoots the gun. Okay, there's one shot. Now, whatever happens after that, whether it's Alex or whoever the other shooter is, Paul doesn't die from that. He walks out. Now, I'm also assuming, I've never been shot, but I'm assuming if somebody shoots me with a 12-gauge shotgun, especially if it's my father, I'm going to do some screaming. There's going to be some yelling going on, right?
Would think so.
So, I mean, if I'm Maggie, I have to hear that. But let's just say she didn't pay much attention to it. She just thought, maybe Paul's shooting at a squirrel or something. And so he shoots again. But you have to remember, at this time, Paul, if the state is saying what happens, Maggie knows that Paul and Alec are together. So I'm assuming she hears it. Either way, he has to then recoil the gun again and put another shell into the casing, into the chamber, and then shoot him again, at this time, what the state said, in his shoulder, and a shoulder from an upward angle. Yeah. But here's the problem with the first shot. The first shot is almost dead on straight, almost from a person who was probably more like 5'10" to maybe 6 foot, but somewhere around that range. Because no one's going to shoot a 12 gauge unless you put it on your shoulder, right? You're going to shoulder fire this thing. But at 6'4", see where Alec is his legs were only a 32-inch, but his waist was really high. So that means his his shoulders were higher than most people who stood
Absolutely.
6'4", because most people 6'4", their legs are taller. Anyway, his shoulders are a bit higher. So at the angle, from a shoulder angle, he didn't shoot it from a shoulder angle. And I've done plenty of videos on these and showed it. Here's 6'4", here's 6'2", here's 6 foot, and here's 5'10". And 5'10" is pretty much straight on. But let's just say he did it. Okay, let's keep moving on with that one. So you've got to put another shell into the chamber, and you got to shoot him. So Maggie hears this, and she runs out, and her phone locks, and she runs a distance of 12 steps, which is about 30 feet. And that's where she laid. That's where she died. That's where she got shot. And now you're saying Alex then drops that gun and then picks up the other 300, and then he has to do the same thing. So he's at the front of the dog kennels in the feed room, and he's got to then grab that 300, put down, first of all, to put down the 12 gauge, pick up the 300, and then he's got to run at an angle of 41 degrees to get to her by the dog kennel. And he has to be there, because she has stippling on her body. And for those who don't know, gun stippling is I don't know what you would call it. It's just like a dust that comes out.
Spray of dust.
Yeah. But if you were to shoot somebody from 10 feet or more, they wouldn't get stippling on their body. So you have to shoot them close. We're getting a little graphic here, but you have to shoot them. So within, I think Kenny Kinsey said it was like within 3 to 5 feet. And so he's got to run 12 steps at an angle of 41 degrees to get to where she is.
And turn correctly?
And turn, because he's running at an angle and then turn to shoot her, which is kind of a wild shot. If you look at the way she was shot in her body, it was in her shoulder, it was in her breast, it was in her leg, it was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And he just, I tried replicating this. I could not do what the state said he did in that amount of time. It's, boom, put another shell in, wait a second, because Paul took 2-3 steps out, then shoot again. Okay, now Maggie's running out, and then she's going to be there in 30 feet. It's going to take her just seconds to get there. I say like 6 seconds, not long at all. And then he's got to grab the 300, and he's got to get there in the same 6 seconds. So it's time, speed, and distance. And you're talking about physics and two traveling things at the same time. If you're traveling at the same speed, you should see, and you start at the same distance, you should get to the same place at the same time.
Right.
But if she starts sooner, she's not going to be at the spot where she died.
Right.
He cannot, in the time that the state says he did it, I tried it numerous times. I couldn't get to that spot. And I don't have bad knees. I'm not high on opioids. And I can see. And it was, and I'm doing this experiment in broad daylight. I just couldn't do it.
Well, that experiment, and you talk about that in the book very well. I tried that here in my studio with some string. And I put up angles, use my desk as the point. The control, and I put up 41 degrees, and I used the different measurements, and I took the steps and I scaled it down to size. And for me, it was having to shoot twice, drop, turn, run, and be able to turn back around, pick up, cock, and fire. Obviously, she would have seen him. I think it just doesn't make sense. Hence my comment about maybe a Navy SEAL could do it. I don't know. I just don't know.
I think I said NFL wide receiver.
Yeah, you might have, yeah.
But you still have to have some shooting skills, which I understand Alec was not probably the greatest at. But it can't be done.
I took the information that I knew, took your information, jotted a few things down, and obviously you could tell I like numbers and geometry and stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, and I can't remember rather in your book if you said 5'10", but I had in my notes here 5'8" to 5'4". That was where my calculations kind of went to my thoughts of the shooter. and at least in
Which-
that scenario, on Paul.
Paul, yeah.
On Paul. I do believe that it has to be, so let's just say 5'4" to 5'10", somewhere in there, someone who knows this property very well. And I think you made that clear in how you presented in the book. Not only knows the property well, knows the family extremely well, behavioral, familial, all that kind of stuff, and is rather gun savvy. That, and I think
That fits a lot of Paul's friends.
well, and hence my next comment was, you talked a lot about in the book about the big white 4-wheel drive truck with big tires, redneck style. I mean, what's the percentage of Hampton or Colleton County that has a big white 4-wheel drive with huge tires? I mean, there's a lot of them out there. I would suffice to say the people in that circle around Paul, many I don't know, but just the cast that I am aware of, knowing the property well, knowing the family well, gun savvy, big 4-wheel drive truck with big tires.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like that would be synonymous together. Is that a fair assumption?
Absolutely, it's a fair assumption. He was looking at doing serious prison time. Paul was for the boat wreck, and then you have this unsolved murder in Hampton County of an individual there. But more importantly, back to the white truck, I interviewed Blanca Simpson. It was quite a few months ago. It was this summer, and before I had interviewed her, I had sent her author, because her author and I were, she has a new book coming out. Her author and I were texting back and forth. And I talked to her about the white truck. And I said, I'm going to send you a picture of a white Ford pickup truck, because on the stand during cross-examination, Dick Harpootlian was talking to Blanca. And I forget how Dick kind of left it off, but Blanca just started talking. And that's never good for a witness when you're an attorney. But what she said was, she goes, I was doing some laundry and I walked upstairs under the second floor and I was putting clothes away. I looked out the window and I saw a white pickup truck down at the kennels. And she goes, I don't know. I thought it was Paul's truck and thought it was Paul. I wasn't sure. So I left, and I left the front door open because I thought, well, it might be Paul. So I wanted to follow up on that with her. And I sent her the picture of the white pickup truck of the person that I know of that was involved in this other death. And I sent it to her just like, hey, I just send her this truck and ask her if this is the truck, not a picture of the truck, not close to the truck. Is this the truck that she saw that day down at the kennels? And the answer came back was a resounding yes on the truck. Okay. So then that was in text. And then I go to meet with her and I'm like, so why did you think it was that truck? She goes, there's a lot of white Ford. It was a specific white 4-door Ford F-150 lifted truck with the big tires on. She goes, there's a lot of those down here. And I said, no, I get that. I said, well, why did you think it was like, the F-250 Dolly that they name all their trucks? I said, what do you think it was an F-2? She looked at me. She's like, I know what the difference between an F-150 and an F-250 is. They're doing this on my intelligence. I'm like, I'm just asking. So she goes, yeah, that was the truck. She goes, where'd you get that picture? And I said, well, before I tell you where I got the picture from, I said, wow, why did you think it wasn't family? And she goes, oh, that's easy. She goes, everybody in the family drives down to the Moselle hangar and they all park in the same spot the same way. Mm-hmm. She goes, this truck was parked not in that spot and was parked differently. So that's why it stuck out to me. She goes, I probably wouldn't even notice if I just saw a white truck parked in the same spot. She goes, but this was not parked in the family spot where everybody parks. And that includes John Marvin, who has a white Ford F-150. Grandpa at the time had a Ford F-150. And Paul had the white Ford F-150. And Paul had taken his car over to the auto center to get work done. Grandpa clearly was in the hospital, and John Marvin was dealing with Grandpa in the hospital. So none of the family members were there. So it was somebody who was not a family member. And this person whose truck it was is a person who I just wrote an article a few weeks ago about the death of Stephen Smith, and I had a confidential source name a person in that, and that's that person's truck.
Mhm. Do you? I didn't obviously, folks. We didn't talk about this beforehand. This is live, raw, and unedited. Do you mind if I ask some questions about those two individuals that have reappeared again in his possible or not possible death, his possible murder, but absolute death? Is that okay to ask those?
In for Stephen Smith?
To those two gentlemen that were people of interest in that death.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The article's out there. If you want me to talk and tell them.
Well, here's what I was going to say, and I don't want you to say anything that's not true or whatever you feel comfortable with. But anyway, reading the book, watching watching the trial, watching different things that for the most part have been baloney on TV.
Yeah.
The interesting pair in this to me, and at the end of the book, and folks, I think you even said this, Jim, when you read this book, wait till you get to chapter, I think it's 25, 24, 25, something like that. It's
25.
like, that's the one I needed to get to. All of a sudden, Sean Connolly and Patrick Wilson, their names come up, and I had some things going off in my head, and I'm thinking,
well, their names aren't in my book, but they're certainly the article.
Maybe it was somewhere. I tied it all together. If that wasn't in your book, but chapter 25 is what put all this, started to get it together in my head. When I started thinking about this tangled web, the tangled web we weave.
Right.
Well, this Connolly and Wilson, correct me if I'm wrong, they were friends with Paul more so than Buster, but Paul and Buster. And from what I gather, Randy Murdaugh had filed lawsuits against the Connolly, he's a man, boy then, after like an attempted murder or something like that.
No, so
something.
There's a lot to unpack there. But as far as, so Patrick Wilson and Sean Connolly, in fact, Sean Connolly was named in the mate report in the death of Stephen Smith. Their names have been tossed around for years. Side view mirrors and all these things. And those two ran and they got into a lot of trouble in 2015, 2016, 2017. They got pulled over by police on a constant basis. Mm-hmm. I think between the two of them, it was almost 30 times in like 24 months. It's ungodly between 2015. And in 2015, Patrick Wilson was arrested in April of 2015 for pulling a gun out and shooting it at someone who owed him money, or he thought it owed money, and he went into Sean Connolly's truck, got a gun, and shot him as they were driving away. Apparently, he hit like a sign or something along those lines. So he was arrested for attempted murder in April of 2015. Stephen Smith was still alive. Sean Connolly had been in a car accident with somebody, and Randy Murdaugh he filed a lawsuit for his client against Sean Connolly during that time as well. So that's how Randy Murdaugh gets involved with Sean Connolly, which was eventually dismissed or dropped, or they came to some sort of settlement, probably with the insurance company. But yeah, so those two, their names have been tossed around, and I had written an article basically about that with these two guys, and I was trying to figure out what Patrick Wilson's mother's maiden name was. And for the life of me, I was digging and digging. I couldn't find it. And I came across an article that her name is Laura. I came across an article that called her Laura Altman. And I said, well, that's not really all I have to go. I was searching for hours. So I called her Laura Altman. I got a phone call a few days later from such person. And they were adamant that person's name is not Altman. Don't associate her with Altman. Don't call her an Altman. You need to change that in your story. I was like, well, I said, I just wrote this article about these two guys, and you're worried about somebody being called Altman. I said, I better call them and talk to them.
Wow.
So I called him. I talked to him, and I asked him. I said, "So what do you know about Patrick Wilson? What can you tell me about him?" And it was just silent for a moment. And it was, well, I probably shouldn't be saying anything, but. And then it was an hour and a half later. I finally got off the phone with him in a recorded conversation where this person was at Patrick's house on Prince William's Road, according to them, on July 8th, 2015. And they were over there visiting Patrick's great-grandmother. And it was about 11 o'clock, 11:30. And a couple hours go by. Maybe they fell asleep. I'm not sure. I forget what they had said. But it was a couple hours had gone by. And she had walked in. They had walked in and said, "Well, where's Patrick?" And his great-grandmother said, "Well, he and that Conley boy are out," referring to Sean Conley. And then a couple hours later, they said, Patrick walks in the door. He's very upset. And they're like, "What's going on?" And he comes back and says, the confidential source tells me in this interview, and I quote, it said, "Patrick told us, I'm not feeling good." And went on to say, "I think we hit somebody. I think we killed somebody." And then he went on to throw up. And I was stunned, by the way, end quote. I was stunned at what they had told me. And I said, "Wait a minute. So the great-grandmother told you this?" And they're like, "No, I heard it. I was there." I said, "You heard Patrick Wilson say this?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "On July 8th, 2015, Prince William's Road, 3 miles from Sandy Run Road, where Stephen Smith was found dead on the road. You heard Patrick Austin Wilson tell you, I think we hit somebody. I think we killed somebody. As he was driving with Sean Conley." Yes. Wow. During the hour and a half conversation, it was like 3 different times, because I always wanted to make sure we're talking about these specific people at this specific time. And they were like, "Listen, no one else died in Hampton County that night. That was the only person that got hit." Yes. And they went on to say, and I quote, "I believe they were the ones that killed Stephen Smith," end quote. And allegedly, of course. Wow. That was a complete bombshell. And they went on to tell me a lot of other things about Patrick. But wow. So those two are, according to this confidential source, which came forward, that's what they said happened, that they heard it directly from Patrick Wilson, which corroborates a little bit of what Patrick had told back in 2015, had also told a guy by the name of Darrell Williams. It was a little bit different story, but pretty much the same thing, that Sean had hit somebody and they had died.
Wow. It is straight up 8 o'clock here on Big Patriot Radio in Beaufort County's House of Cards. We are live with crimeandcast.com. More in a minute.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
Let's go.
The station that keeps it rocking 24/7.
Ladies and gentlemen,
BigPatriotRadio.com.
We are live with Crime and Cask. James Seidel here with us on Beaufort County's House of Cards. Yeah. And we're talking about the Murdaugh, the Murdaugh murders, and defending James' new book, Defending Alex Murdaugh. There you see it on the screen. Not Guilty by Reasonable Doubt. I highly, highly, highly recommend this. Maybe. Whether it's Audible or you do the old-timey way where we actually sit and read. James, I want to take us to the piece about the money spent in the drugs. I'm not a drug addict, never have been a drug addict. I have known some here and there. Mm-hmm. Never been part of the mafia or anything like that. But a couple of things come to mind. And I keep hearing about 60 pills a day. That was in different places, that's where I hear. So I'm going to just go with what I'm being told. I don't see how, even at 6'4", 280 plus pounds, I don't see how one human can ingest 60 oxys a day. Has anybody ever really thought about that, or am I way off base? And yeah, we do it all the time.
No, I don't think you're off base whatsoever. When we start talking about this, there's things that we have to guess because we're going on based what Alec basically is telling us. But you're talking about 60 a day. Let's say they range anywhere from 10 to 20 milligrams. They could go up to even higher milligrams for that matter. So I've heard some people tell me, yeah, it's possible. There's very few people that have said that. And for the most part, it's impossible. I had cancer a few years ago. I had this upper maxillary cancer. So I'm fine. But what I had to do was I had to take prescription pain pills. And, if I took 20 milligrams or 30 milligrams, 2 or 3 pills a day, like I was out of it. So, and I didn't like it. And it has all kinds of crazy side effects with dry mouth and other issues. So now you're talking about 60 pills. And now I did interview a guy way back in the day before he went to prison. His name was Jerry Rivers. And Jerry Rivers was a guy out of Walterboro who was the guy who supplied the pills to Cousin Eddie. And Cousin Eddie was the guy who gave them to Alec. And he was, what he had told me, it was like, if he was getting that many pills, he wasn't getting them all from me. And he goes, in my opinion, I had thought I was the guy that was supplying Eddie with the pills that were going to Alec. So he didn't think that he was getting that many pills. If he was, it wasn't from him. And he was getting somewhere else.
And for Alec to be a somewhat functioning, attorney still. I mean, he was still, obviously he was having cases because he was embezzling all the money. Driving, he did the hunting and out in the fields. And I mean, he, for all intents and purposes, it appears he was quote unquote somewhat normal. I just don't see 60 oxys a day. I mean, do the math, that many a year divided by 4 for being sick and, all kind of other variables. I just don't see it possible.
I don't buy it either.
Yeah, if you look at the cost, from what I understand, on the street, it's like $10 a pill or something, $8, $10, whatever. You add all that up, the numbers don't add up to all the money that was missing. Am I stretching it, or am I on the right page?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of money missing. I heard a figure in the time that he had actual earnings, legal earnings, and his thefts was to the tune of about $29 million over, I want to say about a 15-year period, maybe a little bit longer.
That's what.
And in that 15-year period, he earned and illegally earned $29 million, and he also spent $29 million. What I do know about the Murdaughs is that they lived a very lavish lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And when I'm telling you lavish, we're talking either private plane or first class, or renting a boat in the Gulf of Mexico, and house on the beach, sideline, 50-yard line, tickets to everything, just.
Right. But was he spending, divide that over 15 years, was he spending $2 million a year on fun? Where I'm going with that is, it seems like there's more money than there is drugs. And yeah, even though they lived lavishly and had all the toys and did all that stuff, I just don't see where the accounting for that money equals. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, he did also buy a lot of land that he still owns, by the way, in Beaufort County.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe that will bring in where I'm going with that. So during, and I don't want to disparage the new show on whatever network, Hulu or whatever. Even though I think I don't like it because they're telling tales that aren't true, timelines that aren't true. I just don't like that.
Yeah,
You
they
don't have
say
to.
at the beginning of the show that this is fictional.
Yeah, I just don't. The way they're doing that, I just don't like it. Anyway, they mentioned, and this is true. They mentioned one of his businesses, which was jelly balls,
Yeah.
and most people don't know what that is. And when I saw that, James, it was like a light went off in my head. I had forgotten about this. When I was on county council, 2016 through 21,
You told me about that. Yeah.
we had a jelly ball problem. That someone had this jelly ball business, and for those of you that don't understand what that is, it's the jellyfish are they're captured and they're taken anyway over to Asia, and it's a delicacy, and up in New York and whatever. Anyway, and I guess ours tastes really damn good. So, but there's a lot of toxicity with it, and it stinks, and it's just a really nasty thing. Anyway, I remembered the conversations on a elected official level having to deal with Alec Murdaugh and some folks from I think it was the Philippines or Indonesia, one of the two, that were here and were really, for lack of better words, really pissed off because we were denying them the opportunity to build a facility up near the air station off of whatever that creek is, Albergati or whatever, another jelly ball operation. Their main operation fed into through whatever that river. Gosh, I can't remember. My mind's going. I want to say the Morgan River. Anyway, it goes by some places. Things are starting to add up. There's an island on that river that opens right up into the ocean that we've done stories on here. It's called Trenchard's Island. There's a whole underbelly with that. I don't know that that's tied into Murdaugh, but I know this jelly ball business was big, big, big money, and it really frosted him and some folks from wherever they were from, that we didn't give them the ability to expand. Has that ever really been dug into by anyone that you know of?
No, I haven't, and if somebody else has, I don't know. What I've dug into as it pertains to Murdaugh Island, and I found this island that they have off of St. Helena. Am I pronouncing that right? Helena?
That's right.
Okay. St. Helena Island. There's an island out there, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, what would be what's the purpose of this? You can't put a house out there, right? But then I looked, and it looks like there's a little house on the end of it. And then I looked at the property lines, and it's not that particular house is not owned by Murdaugh, although he owns the property next to him with a guy by the name of Barrett Bulwer. Barrett Bulwer, if you guys remember, was Alec's partner in a lot of these, and he was in Operation Jackpot back in the 80s, I think, with our current governor, Barrett
Bulwer.
Barrett Bulwer. And so that particular island drew some interest to me, and I'm like, why? So I started looking around. I'm like, let's say you're going to run a drug operation there as an offloading place, right? Mm-hmm. Bring drugs in, somebody's waiting there for them. You hand them over the drugs, they take it into shore. Where on shore would you? And there's, I'm not going to say where, I can tell you offline, but there is a spot not far from what I call Murdaugh Island that is very secluded, cannot get to, and it's fenced up. And that's all I'll say about that. But it's really close, and once you get to once you get onto St. Helena, you're 15, 20 minutes from I-95, and then it's goodbye
Yeah.
drugs. So that's a great landing spot. But who owned that? I thought was really confusing to me. And a friend of mine who also is a writer, Lee Grenade, lives in Beaufort, and she wrote a story about this. And that's how I found it. I called it the Fish Camp. I think her article was like Fishy Fish Camp or something.
Yeah,
I thought it was funny.
that is Trenchard's Island is the actual name of that island.
We're talking about the exact same island.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was a company that owned that property. And I looked and who owns the company and ran it back. And it appears to be the spouse of the clerk of court, maybe.
Yeah.
Huh?
That's correct.
The clerk of court.
The clerk of the wife is the clerk of the courts for Beaufort County.
Yeah.
Her husband is the former. He was a former assistant county, or no, I'm sorry, he was a former partner, department head with the county. He retired and went to work as a property manager or projects manager for Beaufort County Sheriff Tanner, which is interesting because the sheriff's department doesn't have projects that they build, yet he has a property or a projects manager married to the clerk of court, and they have a rather large dwelling on that property.
Yeah, I looked at the water levels there. They're deep enough to bring a decent sized boat in, shrimp boat or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess they do fishing there. I don't know what, but here's the weird part about that particular house. I couldn't find, and maybe I'm looking in the wrong spots. I couldn't find like building permits.
Yeah.
And maybe they would have to have a bathroom out there, so they'd have to dig some sort of a septic tank. And
sure. Yeah.
Why are these records not found?
Or something?
You would think. Why are these records not found? I couldn't find them anywhere. Lee couldn't find them anywhere. And listen, if anybody can find anything, it's Lee. She can dig. She's a great researcher. So yeah, that is a confusing thing. But they own a lot of different properties that basically are these little islands that don't mean anything. And when they were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on these, and that's where a lot of the money went. But the state of South Carolina can't do anything with those as far as like sell the property and give the money to victims because it's in the name of Bulware and Alec.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's where they just sit doing nothing.
Wow. So looking ahead, where, after reading your book, after doing some of my own just scratching on paper, matter of fact, I wrote it down here in notes for tonight. The number one thing was, I am not so sure now that Alex really did it. Is Alec Murdaugh a scoundrel for absconding with millions and millions of dollars from people and ruining lives? Absolutely. He's horrible.
Yeah.
Is he a murderer? James, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I haven't seen any evidence. I hear my good friend over at Fitz News, Will Folks, who I like, he keeps saying this guy by the name, attorney by the name of Eric Bland, a lot of different people, overwhelming evidence of guilt. And I'm just like, what is the overwhelming? I asked Will if he wanted to sit down one time, not to, just a conversation like you and I are having. And I said, I'll come with what my evidence is. And my evidence is from the state of South Carolina. And I just happened to, run it through my experience. I'd be happy to share all that with you and show you that it's impossible for him to have done it. Impossible. And people are going to be scratching their heads and screaming at their computer screens and they're throwing their radios when I say that. But if you seriously read the book, because I go and he can tell you it's second by second. I break it down.
Yeah.
Second by second.
Yep. And if you like numbers, you're gonna get it. Now I get it.
Math doesn't lie. People do, but math doesn't. and I'm using the state's numbers. And so, I just broke it down that way. And he couldn't have done it. And that, not to mention the fact he sings with the phone. So he didn't have his phone. So people go, well, maybe he had help. Well, maybe he did, but he didn't do it all by himself.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, he didn't do it at all.
Yeah. What's next? What's next for Crime and Cask? I know you're working on projects up in like Union County and big deals up there. What else do you have going on?
Well, I will tell you what, Beaufort's on my radar because I was doing all these things in Union County. And sometimes I thought the Low Country is a little bit nutty, and Union County said, hold my beer. But I started doing some things in Union County and covering some things and, things the way they shouldn't be the way they are. And I've gotten a lot of folks from your county reaching out to me, and they're like, please come to Beaufort County. Please come to Beaufort County. There's just, Beaufort County is a beautiful county. There's a lot of great things to do there, but it's these little things in government, maybe crime, that people just aren't happy with. So I'm not saying anything bad about Beaufort County. It's a great county. Same thing with Union County. It really has some beautiful spots to it, but there's just some things that missing people and drugs and murders that go unsolved, and people aren't prosecuted, and if they are, they're let off with easy sentences that it doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of running around doing that. As far as Murdaugh goes, I think he's going to get a new trial. In fact, Dick and Jim are almost adamant that he's getting a new trial. The state of South Carolina admitted that Becky Hill did talk to the jury, but they called it fleeting and foolish, and that it didn't matter. But it does matter. It does matter. In the state of South Carolina, they were using a case of Green v. State and State v. Green, and that's the wrong one to use. You have to use a case called Remmer, which is the law of the land. And Judge, I think it's Kittrick, who's the South Carolina Supreme Court Chief Justice, was the guy who wrote the opinion for Green. And of course, he knows completely what Remmer is. So I think he's going to get a new trial. But I also think once he gets a new trial, you're not going to see anything about Alec Murdaugh. I mean, he's in prison. He's going to sit there. He's not going anywhere.
No.
Until after this gubernatorial race we have coming up in 26. I think Alan Wilson's going to kick the can down the road on that one. And if I was him, I would too. He's got other things to deal with. Murdaugh's right where he needs to be. Let's deal with this after the gubernatorial race and see what happens from there.
And he's got to, this could blow if he were not thinking that way. And I'm sure he's got people who are telling him, no, we're going to wait. Yeah. This could blow back in a bad embarrassment.
Well, I will tell you this. All the information I told you about Stephen Smith and all the information about Blanca, and I have evidence to back all this stuff up. I gave all that to SLED. I sat down with one of their agents down I was in Conway. He's out of the Low Country, but I met him in Conway at my attorney's office. I gave him all the information. I gave him the interview. I gave him what Blanca had said, the pictures of the people, and how all this connects and has nothing to do with Alec Murdaugh. So they know exactly what I know and what was said. So we'll see what SLED does with it. I don't know.
So with you saying that, I mean, that only leads me to a couple of things. If you gave them everything that you've got and the backup to the backup,
right?
They're either ignorant or they're irresponsible, I guess is the right way to say it. I mean, and I can't say that they're ignorant because they're not, but are they just looking the other way? Or is there something unknown, nefarious laying in the background? Did Alec Murdaugh have somebody in that part of the law that wanted to see him behind bars for a long, long time?
Well, I do believe that, but I asked that question to Dick and Jim, and especially about the Stephen Smith stuff, and they didn't believe that there was going to be an indictment from that, even though the information that they have is so damning and can be used in a court of law. And I said, why? And he said, because if it takes any pressure whatsoever off of Alec Murdaugh and the Murdaugh family, they won't do it. That's their opinion. That's not mine. I don't know why they're not doing anything. I hope they do. I hope maybe they're just, working hard at it and going to do the right thing, because it is the right thing. As you said, Alec Murdaugh's not a good dude, and he's going to be in prison for a long time, but he didn't do this. So let's just get it right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%.
If you got it wrong, just say, hey, I did it wrong. I'm sorry. And we were misled. And,
I think his financial crime penalty is, he could never outlive the sentence. So it's not a matter of he'll get out. It's a matter of, right and wrong. And if it's wrong, let's find out who did it and let's get them off the street for those two murders and for Stephen Smith. It is what it is. James, thank you so much. You are an incredible journalist. Just want you to know that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Love the work that you do. Love watching your TikToks. I put your address there at Crime and Cask on TikTok. Folks, you got to check him out. He does a hell of a job. You're the professional. You're the real journalist. You're an inspiration to those of us out here who are, just trying to make somewhat little bit of morsel impact on society. But folks, get this book. You see it right there. Defending Alex Murdaugh, Not Guilty by Reasonable Doubt by Crime and Cask. See it. You can get it on Amazon. Follow him on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. James, thank you so much. Stay around, stay tuned, and let us know if we can do anything for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Cask out.
All right. All right. It is 23 minutes after the hour.
Your Rock Authority. Patriot Radio.
I wouldn't tell anybody about this.
All right. It is 23 minutes past. We are coming out of turn 4. Going to be ending this show here right quick. Man, glad to have him on here. A lot of fresh stuff, a lot of new stuff, a lot of mind-blowing going on. Again, get the book. I don't know what it was. 25, 35, 38. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Get it on Amazon on the Audible and just listen to it. That's like $8. Whatever. Get the book, read it. It's going to make you stop and think a minute. It's going to make you stop and think. All right, a couple of good news items. You remember the story we ran about the lakes at New Riverside in the Pritchardville area, the shooting adjacent to it, where the problem was the bullets from said shooter was coming into or let me rephrase that, going through fences and going through the vinyl siding into the home. Anyway, I have been involved in that, writing letters, helping those folks where I can, sending emails, using some influence here and there. Lo and behold, Beaufort County Council Beaufort County is going to have a meeting to address this issue, a public meeting. I can only assume they are going to solicit the town of Bluffton PD and council for their involvement, because this is a donut hole issue. I'm going to add that I greatly appreciate Representative Weston Newton and Representative Bill Herb Kurzman. Got them both involved. They stepped up and insisted, hey, something's got to be done about this. Also, we received notice from an informant that they're going to be releasing. Oh yes, this happened today. And we received notice from an informant that this person may be releasing information that will implicate who inside the Beaufort County Administration Building was the actual point person in the Ashley Jacobs firing scandal, the Eric Greenway firing story, other county employees' firings, as they put it. I'm being told this person worked with 3 or 4 individuals on the current county council to secretly do this work for control narratives out of the administrator's office. That's all I know. Pretty deep, pretty heavy. I don't know who they're talking about. I don't know why they haven't given it up yet. I can only say, okay, I'll wait for it. So you see, whatever this is, whenever it is, when you get close to the top of the problem, that is when you get over that problem and you start shining a light on that problem, the cockroaches, they start scattering. And when you get back into the dark, the cockroaches, they come back out. People are the same way. When you shine a light over that subject, over the target, the cockroaches start running for cover. And of course, we're going to keep investigating that and verify it. But rest assured, we are going to bring it to you once it's ready.
Locked and loaded.
Let's go.
Big Patriot Radio. Blues, news, country pop, and classic rock.
All right, folks, tune in next week right here on Thursday night. We are going to have South Carolina House of Representatives Republican Mark Smith from Daniel Island on the show. He is the leading Republican candidate for the 1st Congressional District seat currently held by Nancy Mace here in South Carolina. You're not going to want to miss that show as we bring him on and we start asking the hard questions. And as primary is coming up next June, there are like 5 Republicans running for that title, 5 Democrats. We'll see what happens. We're going to be back 7 o'clock p.m. Facebook, YouTube, and simulcasting right here on BigPatriotRadio.com. Don't forget to like and share this stream if you can. Send us some stars on Facebook. Remember to like and share this show. Until next week, be safe and watch your 6. Good night, everybody.